Hey everybody, welcome to Grimsforge Gaming. Today we're going to be covering the ebb and flow of PvP and ESO, and specifically I'd like to talk about OConsole, Proc Sets, and the current state of PvP in ESO. Now I did do some graphs or some wave graphs. They're very crude, but basically let's just kind of jump into it. It's the best way that I can kind of depict or show what's happening in PvP. Okay, so let's just jump right in and let's unpack this here. All right, so this first graph that I'm going to be showing you guys here, this is basic PvP ebb and flow, okay? Now let's say we're taking two classes, same class, and this is a typical front bar, back bar setup. This is everything up until a couple patches ago, say pre-hybridization or even hybridization, that's fine, okay? But pre-OConsole for sure, okay? This build right now, this class and character, they're not using proc sets. This is just a front bar, back bar setup, maybe stat based PvP, okay? Both characters are starting flat-footed in the fight, meaning they don't have their buffs already applied, and let's say they're unbuffed and they engage each other, okay? What's going to happen right at the start is both sides, if they understand PvP and they know what they're doing, and they're the same class too, they're going to apply their buffs very quickly, which is their offensive buff, right? So maybe rally or degeneration, so that way they have their major brutality, major sorcery, and they're going to get their defensive buff going, and then they're going to apply probably a preemptive heal like a hot. Maybe they get rapid regen going or their vigor going, whatever it is, all right? This happens right at the beginning of the fight, because if any of those things do not happen at the beginning of the fight, you're missing your armor buff, you're missing your damage buff, or you're missing preemptive heals to start the assault, okay? And so normally most of those things happen right at the beginning of the fight. Also, while those things are happening, or just shortly after they happen, a duelist or a PvPer will immediately go to a hard CC, a stun, right, to start the CC rotation, okay? And this is important because sometimes you cannot kill people outright. You need to make it a resource fight, okay? And there's no better way to stam check someone or make a fight a resource fight than continually applying on cooldown your stuns, right? Stunning the player, making them have to break free, okay? And so that stun or crowd control effect will happen early in the fight on both sides. Now resources are being even more resources are being used, right? We are applying buffs, applying preemptive heals, and now we just got stunned, or we're applying a stun and then in turn getting stunned back, right? This is the ebb and flow of basic PvP, stat-based PvP. Okay, the stun happens, now you're going offensive, and we're moving towards, we'll say this 3 is the peak damage that a player can withstand, right? And we're looking at basic death there, okay? And as we're rising in damage output, our buffs and our heals are still going at this point. This player that we're attacking comes off of CC immunity, and we're going to apply another crowd control effect, which hopefully lines up our ultimate, and we can land our ultimate on them and finish them off, right? And this is generalizing the ebb and flow of how combat works. When we're not talking about OConsole, we're not talking about procs, okay? We're talking about stat-based, balanced PvP. This is the ebb and flow, okay? This ebb and flow is also great for learning purposes for newer players. This ebb and flow allows for mistakes, and it allows for you to kind of right the ship, course correct, pivot, and fix it. Okay, so they ult dump on you, and in that moment after they ult dump on you, assuming you survive, their threat level starts to go down with stat-based builds because they drop their ultimate. Now they're going to need to start thinking about reapplying their buffs, reapplying their hots, reapplying everything. So just before they go into rebuffing, they're going to hit you with another hard CC, so that way they're safe in the moment while they're bar swapping and getting everything back up and going. Okay, and they are at their least threatening during that moment. Right now you are having to break free of that CC and stuff, but you know, they just dumped an ult on you and lined up their burst on you, and so now we start entering that build up phase again, where they start going offensive, and just before they're going to drop their ult, then they're going to hit you with another CC, drop the ult, and try and finish you off. Assuming they don't, now they go back down. Okay, this is the ebb and flow of healthy PvP, in my opinion. Okay, all of this is in my opinion, and I wouldn't necessarily say that the seconds durations or the time elapsed isn't proper, but it's close enough. Okay, it's fairly close. I could stretch this out. I've never used this program before, but this is basically the gist of the ebb and flow of PvP. In the moment where they stun you, they're at least threatening because they're reapplying their hots, reapplying their heals, and then they break and start going offensive again and start becoming more threatening, more dangerous, until we reach a pinnacle here. Okay, basic PvP ebb and flow. That's that chart right there. Let's jump into the next one. This is Proc Set PVP ebb and flow. Okay, with Proc Sets, if you start the fight with a CC, there's a lot of Proc Sets are initiated by direct damage or just damage output in general, or a light or heavy attack, right? And so just initiating your CC in some cases will initiate the proc damage, right? And so what we see is, we don't see an ebb where we go down like we did with basic healthy PvP, we'll say. And who am I to say what's healthy and what's not, right? I guess that's for the devs to decide. But we can apply procs immediately in PvP in most circumstances just by stunning the person, which shoots our damage output off the charts right off the bat. And if 3 is the most that a player can handle, the most amount of pressure that we can turn out in ESO that a player can withstand before they die, we can get to 3 very quickly, right? We explode up because the proc damage is already applying pressure to them. And if you think about where they're at, if they're a stat-based build, they're down here right now, right? They are applying their buffs, applying their hots and everything. And so that damage really hits them hard, okay? And then the CC comes inevitably just before the burst damage, and they probably have not even mounted an offense yet because they are on their back bar trying to weather the storm. And this is the problem that Proc Sets provide for newer players. I've trained PvPers for 3+ years now, and the biggest complaints are, I get nuked before I even know what's happening. I get blown up before I can even do anything. I can't get off my back bar. I'm under too much pressure. And sometimes it is that their builds are faulty, or their play style or mechanics, or they're just simply out of position. You know, the 3 no-nos that I list in my Own Your Battleground series, right? They're either out of position, they're out of resources, or they're outnumbered. So those things happen. But as they start learning about those things, they're still experiencing the pressure that Proc Sets bring, okay? And the CC happens, and then the ult dump happens. Now here's the thing about Proc Sets. When you look at that other chart, let's pull this up again. When you look at this chart here, there's a time where the damage starts going down, and we fall under this 1, right? And we even fall under to where there might not be any damage coming in that moment. Maybe a basic hot, and if there was, or a dot, sorry, and if there was a dot, the bar would ebb to here rather than down here. But if they don't have dot pressure and they're only relying on direct damage output, there is no direct damage coming when they're reapplying their buffs usually, okay? And so with proc sets, we don't see that. We see consistent damage output, okay? And so the stun happens because they're reapplying their buffs, okay? Because we're not an OConsole build. We're just wearing procs on this, and maybe we're wearing 1 proc set or even 2 proc sets or 3 proc sets, whatever. And maybe this bar needs to be raised up to 2, you know, if they're wearing 3. You know, maybe it needs to be raised up a little higher if they're wearing 3 proc sets. I don't know. But the damage is significantly more than when they're a non-threat and they're just cycling through, bar swapping, and reapplying their buffs and hots. For sure. This is a for sure thing that happens just by wearing proc sets. Now, the problem with this is these individuals crutch or rely on the proc set damage when we're talking about newer players, and they never learn the ebb and flow of how to reapply their buffs and how to deal with sustain, because the damage output from proc sets ends up being more than a lot of other beginning players can withstand. They just can't handle the constant pressure, right? And that's where the false sense of security comes. And when I'm working with people that I've been PvPing for 3 to 4 years, and every time I run into a 1v1 against a good player, I still die. It's because you cheated the process by wearing proc sets and you didn't learn the intricacies of maintaining your resource, reapplying your buffs, and bar swapping. Okay? And so proc sets will apply infinitely more damage through this buff stage, and then the CCs still come just before the ult dumps, okay? So we're seeing more damage output even in the lows where buffs are being reapplied, and that's the procs doing the damage, okay? So let's pull up the next one. This next one is OConsole PVP ebb and flow, okay? And now OConsole PVP ebb and flow, immediately, here's the thing, there is no ebb to OConsole, right? There is no dropping down below the bar where we're reapplying our buffs, we're reapplying our hots, all right? OConsole is stun them at the beginning and you go 0 to 100 immediately, okay? Now, we don't quite have the immediate burst that proc pressure brings, but we go right into our rotation. And then we CC them before our ultimate. And because we're going to get our ultimate back before they will, we're probably going to... This duration could probably be shortened to here. Because we have major heroism, right? We're going to get our ultimate before maybe this proc set user does. So this peak right here could probably be right there. And that's super problematic. We are generating more ultimates with OConsole than other builds. And we don't need buff reapplying times. I don't need to put my offensive buff on my major brutality or major sorcery and reapply my armor buff. They're up 100% of the time. Okay? That's super problematic. Not only do they not have to reapply their offensive and defensive buff, they're going to get their ultimate quicker than everyone else. They're getting their ultimate usually quicker than proc set users. They're getting their ultimate better than basic PvP stat-based builds. And this is a problem with OConsole, okay? The stun comes before the ultimate, and then we don't even drop down even that far. This is, the stun happens and proc sets are carrying us with damage while we're reapplying our buffs. The only drop down here is... maybe I need to channel some heavy attacks because I went really hard out the gate with my offense, and now I need to get some sustain or some resources back. And that's depending on how they build. These are all, you know, both parties are built similar. Okay, both parties have OConsole, whatever. They're coming out of the gate. Now, if you take an OConsole PvP ebb and flow and you put it against a stat-based build, OConsole is going to blow the stat-based PvP build out of the water. It's going to put them on their back bar and having to survive immense pressure. And not only that, OConsole with major protection and all the major buffs, right? But let's just talk about ult generation, right? If I took the ult generation out of out of the picture, which it's very hard to take it out of the picture with OConsole. If you took the major heroism out and our ultimates were coming at the same time, I'm still able to provide more pressure than even Proc Sets, because I can just go offensive the entire time. Offensive the entire time. Stun them, more offense. Stun them, more offense. Maybe throw a heal in. Okay? And this is part of the problem. So we're going to move this over, and we're going to introduce another. This is OConsole with Proc Sets. Okay? OConsole with Proc Sets. And now you can see here's OConsole, right? Even on our low times where we're putting resources back in the tank. Okay? Now OConsole with Proc Sets, even on the low, and this could probably even be higher. Like, even while we're sustaining ourselves, get heavy attacking with a lightning staff, or heavy attacking with a flame staff, or heavy attacking dual wield or whatever, trying to get resources back in the tank. All the procs are still running. And so this damage could probably easily be a 3. Okay? And you can see we raised the damage threshold. 3 being the most amount of damage that a player could take, you know, with OConsole and all the other ones. Well, if you use OConsole with Proc Sets, by the time we're hitting our second stun to go in our rotation, they're already at the maximum amount of damage that they could possibly take. This is, I've been testing this. I've been dueling. I was fortunate enough to jump on with some friends. They were using OConsole. I wasn't using OConsole. We were looking at things. We even dropped CP to see. We tried dot-based builds versus we did stat-based builds versus OConsole. We did glass cannon OConsole versus. We did a lot of different things. Okay, and this is what I've experienced. This is my experience with PvP right now, and this is why a lot of content creators are saying this is the absolute worst meta for PvP in ESO. I'm not trying to trash the game. I love the game. I'm trying to educate whoever is listening and why this is problematic and giving you. I do love the concept of OConsole. I have some bow builds that it makes it so much more fluid and so much easier to just stay on one bar, and I am giving up things, right? I don't have 3 or 4 hot options, you know, healing me over time. I literally can throw on 1 or 2 heals and then 2 or 3 offensive, you know, 1 CC and 2 offensive things, and let's see if we can make it work. But with all the additional stats and bonuses that OConsole's bringing to the table, and then if you throw even 1 proc set on it or 2 proc sets, it just becomes way too much damage. And your beginning players will jump to this stuff just to compete, and they won't learn the nuances or the intricacies or the ebb and flow of PvP. And they'll be carried by this set until it's nerfed into the ground, or they'll be carried by proc sets, and they'll be frustrated when their proc sets fail them against good players. Okay, this is just causing immense frustration. All of this also is moving away from balancing of the game. This is like the farthest away from balancing in the game. Balancing in the game would be going in and looking at the trees, the skill trees of each class, and making sure that they're balanced. They can have their own flair. They can have one class could be the hard counter for the other. That's fine. But they need to have access to abilities that are similar, like we have burst damage access early, or we have hot or heal access or burst heal access early in our healing trees and our support trees, and we have access to our armor buff early. Like Templars 7.5, 8 years later still do not get their armor buff. Until you are more likely to get your armor buff with a Templar by getting OConsole by the time you get to CP than actually unlocking it, because it's the last ability and you need to run abilities in that skill line just to unlock it. You can get your major defensive buff from OConsole before you can unlock it if you don't play your cards right, and that's silly. The armor buff in Templars needs to be moved up. Another thing that is problematic when we talk about the next thing, okay, this is a lot of damage. OConsole with proc sets, absolutely ridiculous, silly, silly damage. Okay, we're going to set this over to the side. We're going to pull up one more for you, and here's the last one. Okay, the last one is ult gen. If you're doing OConsole and building into ult gen, so you can run major heroism, minor heroism, and then you can have sets like a werewolf's hide or whatever that give you, as you're damaged, additional ult, and you can run decisive. So say you're dual wield, you can run decisive on your off bar, your second weapon, right? And now I have a 55% chance of every time I gain an ultimate, gaining an additional ultimate. Okay, and now look at the downtime. Actually, the downtime might not even be this, right? The downtime might just stay, it might just come up here and stay consistent. If you have 100% uptime on corrosive armor, like even in the moments where you're channeling heavy attack, you are doing true damage to them. You're full pinning them, right? I can make right now a Magplar that will have 100% uptime on my Resto ult. I can do an OConsole Magplar with a Resto staff. I don't need a lightning staff to toppling charge to someone and spam sweeps, right? I can build into ult gen and have 100% uptime on my Resto ult. Tell me that's not broken. Tell me that's not broken. So this is the problem. I'm not trying to trash the game. I'm trying to educate people or devs or whoever is watching in this major problem. If you're going to keep OConsole in the game for PvP sake, because people have disabilities, they have a hard time bar swapping or whatever, I'm all for that. I'm all for that. But you have to get rid of major heroism. You have to get rid of major protection. It makes no sense. Like, well, the 2-bar builds have extra bars, therefore they can put a major protection on their bar. No, you have to give up something if you're going to have a play style that allows for no bar swapping, no buff upkeep, and they can just go offensive from the get-go. That is the bonus. That is the bonus. It doesn't have to be all of these major buffs that you're throwing on OConsole that make it just completely overperforming. Okay? I love ESO and I love PvP in ESO, and that's why I made this video. It's not to trash it, and there's going to be tons of people that run to OConsole, and you absolutely should until they do something about it, or you're fighting at a disadvantage. I'm going to put OConsole on everything to be competitive, because I'm running into people that have 100% uptime on corrosive, 100% uptime on their Resto ult, 100% uptime on the sword and board ult. They're blocking all the time. It's ridiculous. Okay? And my last little tidbit for the day, as if that wasn't enough, we've got Plague Break in the game. Okay? That the purpose of Plague Break was to be able to combat ball groups. You cannot add armor sets like Plague Break and think that the ball groups are not going to use these sets. The ball groups are running around, and their frontliners are using Plague Break and applying it to everyone in their track, and their second liners, or the frontliners that have Plague Break and they're running OConsole and have an ult up at all times, they have an ult on demand where they can just apply Plague Break, drop a Dawnbreaker, or all 3 people in the front line drop a Dawnbreaker. They kill one person, the chain reaction happens, and they mow everyone down in front of them. Ball groups are doing that. You were supposed to make this stuff. I feel like Obi-Wan Kenobi yelling, you were supposed to save the Jedi, not not fight them, or you were supposed to defeat the Sith, not join them, right? That's what's going on. And so Plague Break is ridiculous, okay? Plague Break is the bane of new PvPers' existence. They don't even know how they're dying. They just see, I got 36k damage from Plague Break. And I'm training PvPers and new guilds and everything else right now. And the healers are dropping their extended ritual because they're trying to do their job. And that's one of the things they're supposed to do. And they're killing their entire group. Like, why would we ever make an armor set and incorporate it into the game that punishes you for fulfilling your role with the group? I don't like to damage people. I don't like to tank. I like to heal. I want to be support. I want to keep people alive. And now I killed everyone. Okay? Plague Break is ridiculous for PvP. Anything like that is ridiculous for PvP. Now, change Plague Break to where they have to kill them, just like Vicious Death operates. Currently, Plague Break is, long as they have the effect on them, if anyone kills them, they explode, create a chain reaction, chaos ensues. Alright? Now let's amplify the problem with PvP. Let's go to CP and let's look at Occult Overload, where you get 12,500 damage if you put all the points into that. You kill somebody and they're going to explode for 12,500 damage on top of a Vicious Death, on top of a Plague Break. It is not needed. And Occult Overload works on NPCs the same way Vicious Death, the same way Plague Break works on NPCs. I'm in the sewers. I'm testing Plague Break. 4 AD are up on a ledge and they buff up, and I see them buffing up. I gather up all the mobs in the room. I wait for the 4 AD to jump down. I kill one of the mobs. All the mobs explode and kill all 4 AD. I didn't even have to fight them. That is not riveting PvP. It's funny and it makes highlights. And it makes the top 5 watching the most ridiculous stuff clear and kill groups of people by hitting one button. It's actually kind of a joke. It's a joke. It's not balanced PvP. Okay? So OConsole with ult gen, we just see the largest numbers we've ever seen before. And if you were to do some type of ult gen with proc sets on there too, new players, this is not a healthy PvP environment. What we're doing right now is not healthy whatsoever. For me, I'm going to no CP. I have been at no CP. It's been great. You don't deal with Occult Overload. You don't deal with Dark Convergence. You don't deal with Plague Break. You know, OConsole should not be allowed in no CP in its current fashion. We're talking about demigods walking around on the field where there's no procs. You can, the only way you can combat OConsole is you yourself have OConsole and have a better understanding of your class, your build, your whatever. That's it. If you go with a stat-based build against an OConsole player that knows what they're doing, because of the ebb and flow, you are stuck at this. They can come in with this. You know, they, well, maybe not procs. They can come in with this. There's a big difference between the two. There's a lot more pressure through here. Trust me, I've tested this. I've been PvPing with people and dueling with people, and they'll run OConsole and I won't, and I'll try stat-based build versus this or a dot-based build. OConsole is overperforming. Everyone should run to it right now. It needs to be addressed, and more people need to be talking about this. It needs to be either taken out of PvP or it needs to have all of its major buffs removed, because just the bonus of not having to reapply buffs, you don't have to reapply your major brutality or major sorcery. You don't have to apply your armor buff, major resolve. You can just stay offensive, and these people have to reapply that. Even the proc set users have to apply that. An OConsole, base OConsole player that knows what they're doing against just a proc set user, this guy can go harder in the paint. Okay? There is no reapplying buffs. They still need to reapply buffs. Okay? My last part is Dark Convergence. Dark Convergence was another set that they were implementing to deal with ball groups. Ball groups are using Dark Convergence. They're using Dark Convergence to line up people for the ult dumps, for the Plague Break, for the Occult Overload, for the OConsole having ult all the time. okay? Ball groups are using Dark Convergence. It's silly to think that you can implement an armor set into the game that's going to be able, this is our savior, we can combat ball groups. Ball groups can use it themselves, and they are. They're mowing everything down in their path. Everybody running OConsole, 100% uptime on their, no downtime with buffs, reapplying buffs. Okay? Dark Convergence area of effect is broken because it can pull you multiple times still. You do not have CC immunity, and you can be holding block after you get yanked and you'll still take full damage. They need to... Dark Convergence area of effect should not be the same size as Caltrops or Extended Ritual. It is a massive, massive window. Okay? We need to shorten that window to, like, the defensive rune for Templars. This thing's like, what, 8 meters? Dark Convergence needs to be something like that. A smaller area. Maybe a little larger than that. You have groups running around just dropping Dark Convergence, lining up the ult dumps, So, I don't know. This arcade style PvP is not enjoyable. It's not enjoyable at all. So, no CP for me, and unfortunately I have to go to Battlegrounds, and I go there to test builds, and I run into the stuff there. And I put these builds together. I played with these builds. I know exactly what's going on. I know how to just, these things are being exploited, and this is right now ESO wants to steer people towards PvP, so they say. ZOS wants to steer new players to PvP. If you're wanting to steer people towards PvP, then you need to make PvP an inhabitable, inviting place, not a place where you get your socks blown off in a millisecond and they literally don't. They spend more time with a respawn timer and sitting in respawn and running back to the fight than they do actually learning how to PvP. That's the current state of the game. So you need to dial everything back. And my last thing, you should not be able to run 2 defensive armor sets. I should not be able to run Fortified Brass and Impreg and still hit 7k weapon and spell damage. Okay? Like we talk about the power spike. It's not a power spike. The power is absolutely off the charts and ridiculously broken at this point. It's arcade style PvP. It's not skill based PvP. It is a slap in the face. Steady Eddie just did a video on this and it was really well done. And I'm looking forward to Is There No One Else doing a video coming up. But it's a slap in the face to the people that have put the time in to get better at PvP. And there are those individuals like myself that want to teach I want to teach new PvPers the intricacies and the nuances of PvP and how to get better and how to sustain through damage and get off your back bar and turn a fight and stuff like that. There are times where I have no answer because of what's in the game right now. There is no answer. Everyone's getting blown up and destroyed and killed because the game is the PvP is in absolute chaos right now. Like, Proc Sets have ruined PvP. OConsole is extremely problematic. And I would say go and look up the definition of pay to win. OConsole fits pay to win pretty darn well. You have to pay for that expansion to get this thing that is absolute win right now. People don't want to play a game very long that is play to win. The second they realize I don't have that, I can never compete, I don't want to play that game. That's the course we're heading right now in this game. And so my recommendation to ZOS or anybody that's listening, they need to move away from let's release the next new most broken thing and then we're going to nerf it 3 months from now. How many people do you think are going to be here 3 or 4 months from now in CP PvP that aren't wearing OConsole and everybody just running around nuking each other, right? And nobody learning how to PvP, right? We are PvPing. We're out here nuking each other. You know, I went 12 and 12 in a battleground, or 12 and 20 in a battleground. It was my best battleground ever. You know, I don't know. Is this by design? Is this because the devs or the company or the investors or whoever, Microsoft, whoever's calling the shots, is this because they don't care? We've got Nephis did a podcast not too long ago with a gentleman. He was a lead instance creator, right? That's not his actual title. I'm sorry, I can't think of it or his name right now. Finnegan, maybe. But, he was talking about the PTS, and he gives his guys 2 days to go back and review, and they put a priority list together, and they fix things. Well, the PTS runs 4 weeks? And he's only given them 2 days to go back and fix things. Is that 2 days come earlier in the PTS or later in the PTS? Where's the 2 days come to go back and fix things? And what if there's so many things that the content creators have found that are problematic or game breaking to the ebb and flow of PvP, and they just don't get addressed? And then 3 months later, it's this, let's create the next new awesome armor set that is unique and does this really cool effect and release it into the wilds. We don't want it. We don't want it. And the people that do want it don't understand how PvP works. They just want it because it's going to make them marginally feel better about their kill to death ratio, but they're not learning how to PvP. I don't know. All of this rant, I'm speaking from a position where over the last 2 years, I think I've trained three PvP guilds. I've worked with 3 guilds. Maybe they started out as PvE, but they want to learn the nuances and intricacies of PvP. So I've been training people for 3+ years now, and it's the same thing over and over again. I'm getting blown up. I don't even know what I'm getting killed by. I don't even have a chance to get off my back bar. I can't win a 1v1, And we've got people, Is There No One Else did a video on this not too long ago, and he was talking about kind of casual toxicity, but it's the people that really want to play the objective, right, in battlegrounds. And the people that complain and refuse to play or whatever when the rest of the team is not, in their opinion, playing the objective. I can tell you this from firsthand experience. I'm at a position now where I don't mind playing the objective because I know that's where the fights are going to be. If it's domination, I know that's where the bodies are going to be. And if I can pick people off along the way, I'll do that. But there have been battlegrounds within the last week where I got accused of not playing the objective because they were dead the entire time. All 3 players on my team were dead almost the entire battleground and complaining at me that I'm not playing the objective. Well, I'm sorry. I'm stuck in a 1v8 fighting the whole other team, both other teams, because you guys are dead. Okay? And that is their lack of understanding in PvP. They don't understand that by you being dead, you're not bringing anything to the table. And I get bogged down in a 1v4 or 1v2 or a 1v8. Because you're dead all the time. It's not a target-rich environment. I am the target, and I'm not going to let them kill me. I'm going to do my best to kill all of them and make a clip of it, right? So, as a whole, the population needs to understand that when you are dead, you are not bringing anything to the table in a battleground. You yourself are not playing the objective. And you want to accuse me, like people will say, what are you doing over there? Well, I'm sorry, I was over here trying to play the objective, but because you're all dead, I'm now fighting 5 people. Would love to play the objective. Trying to kill the 5 people right here so I can actually go do that. That's my rant for the day. I really, really, really implore, I really want you guys to leave comments and discuss this, please. Discuss what I showed here today. If you don't agree with it, discuss it. Bring up your piece on it. If you think OConsole is great for the game in its current capacity, say why. Say why. Let's have a discussion about it. A healthy discussion. I'm not going to say you're an idiot. Tell me something, enlighten me, right? I've been thinking a lot about this video, and I watch Is There No One Else? He was talking about maybe doing a serious video on it, and I'd been thinking about doing it for a while now. I wanted to get my piece out into the world, so here it is. Sorry if this came off as a rant. I'm very passionate about this game. I enjoy it a lot. I really like seeing progress from the people that I'm training in PvP, and I can only do that so much. Like, there is no answer to what's in the game right now. You know, get OConsole. Here's the best 5-bar rotation that you can have with OConsole and the class you're doing. Go out there and do your best to nuke people before they nuke you. Like, that's not PvP. So, all right. You guys have a good day. Please, please, please like this. Share this in your Discords. Let's get this message out. Comment on this. Let's really try and get some traction on this. We need things to change. We need balance brought to PvP. Okay? All right. Be safe, guys.